everybody that's here with us today. I don't know about you, but I'm fired up and ready to go. In Milwaukee, I just checked, it's 27 degrees, sunny, and a little snow. So we're happy as a pig in mud right now to have this as our Wisconsin weather, because it could be 13 below and 14 inches of snow. So we're glad to have all of you here today for our session, Beyond Inclusion, the role of helping HR, the role of HR helping the organization thrive in a post-COVID world. My name is Al Hill, and I'm on the joint Metro Milwaukee SHRM and NAAAHR Planning Committee. And I'm also the president of NAAAHR. So for those of you who don't know the acronym, it's National Association of African Americans in Human Resources. And I'm only going to say that one time because it doesn't roll off the tongue very well, saying it multiple times. And again, I want to welcome everybody that's here for our seventh joint session that we've had along with Metro Milwaukee SHRM. I thought I'd like to kick us off a little bit and talk a little bit about, first of all, our joint venture. But for those of you who are not familiar with NAAAHR, I just would like to just share with you that the Milwaukee chapter is part of a larger organization that goes from coast to coast and is also in the Virgin Islands and in Hawaii. And the Milwaukee chapter is proud to have been a part of NAAAHR for 10 years at this particular time. So it's a part of it, just like SHRM, we're part of a larger organization. And I'll just a little bit go into, Kristen, about our mission and values. Basically, our mission and values is to support the African American human resource professional, along with our allies that do support us in trying to reach our goals and be a voice for those that are in the profession. Our many chapters throughout the country really work very hard to really exemplify and try to push the professional as well as the profession forward within the African American community. Now, I just want to say that although we're unapologetically dedicated to the upward mobility and dedication of African Americans and human resource, we certainly couldn't do that without the help of our allies, and that really support the goals that we try to exhibit. At the local level, just like any chapter, I always say without them, there is no me. I happen to be privileged to be the president of our Milwaukee chapter, but along with me is an awesome board that helps me to carry on the duties of our chapter. And I believe today that we have every board member here on the call except for Angela. So I'm very proud of the work that they do each and every day to uplift the ideals of our chapter. I'm very proud of all the work that they've done throughout the years. And we were the chapter of the year back in 2016. But I'm here also not only just to introduce you to NAAAHR, but also I think it's important that you know a little bit more about the partnership that we have had in NAAAHR, that is, with Metro Milwaukee SHRM throughout the years. Really, this journey started when we really found out that we do have mutual goals. You see the goal on your screen here for Metro Milwaukee SHRM as well as NAAAHR, and basically they do align with basically serving the professional and advancing the profession. Both of our organizations are dedicated to doing that. Now, this partnership that we've had going a long time is really special and unique. I've had the opportunity to present it to our national conference, and in some parts of the country, the partnerships is almost at an adversarial level. But here in Milwaukee, we've decided to come together since 2013, actually, and say, what can we work toward for common goals? So we started working back in 2013 with Tricia Brown when she was the president. And under Rena Summersand, we really started to come together with this joint programming that we have. But I want to mention to you that it's more than just a joint program to our partnership. There's a lot more depth to it than that. And so in 2015, when Andy Gallion was president, the partnership really started to come to fruition, and we actually signed an actual memorandum of understanding between our organizations, because we wanted to get into the depth of doing more than programming. We wanted to do advance our community in some of the issues that human resource professionals do experience, especially in a city like Milwaukee. For those of you who are here with us that are not from Milwaukee, there are a lot of things that impact us as HR professionals in terms of such as taking a look at one of the first things that we really worked together on was a Black male project, because unfortunately in Milwaukee we have the highest rate of African American male unemployment in the country. We also have the poorest zip code in the country. And also the highest Black male incarceration in the country, which affects the employment of African American males. And we together wanted to say, what could we use for our talent in order to work together to maybe try to minimize, and also how can we help the employability of African American males. We also wanted to take a look at the lack of African American representation in HR leadership. And we also wanted to work at growing cultural competence within our organization and expose each other, because we are a segregated city. Why can't we take our organization and be a model for understanding and gaining cultural competence between African Americans and the majority community? So we took and we leveraged that talent with a joint committee. And while it lost a little bit of steam, we certainly are proud of using that as a springboard for continuing our partnership. And I also just want to say that hopefully with Christy now being the president of Milwaukee SHRM, I hope and I know that she's dedicated to us continuing to working together, even currently as we're speaking right now. So our combined goals and objectives that you see here, we need to continually to work at these as well as other ones, seeing that what has happened in 2020 together. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to collaborate together and work for the betterment of both our organizations, as well as the betterment of the community, which I think is very important, that if we work together, that we can make Milwaukee an employer of choice, where good talent wants to stay and they want to work, and we want them to be here with us. So that's a little bit of our partnership that we've had and grown. As president of NAAAHR, I'm very proud of the partnership that we have and of what we've accomplished together, and that we've done just beyond having this joint session that we have every January to kick things off. Before I turn it over, I just want to first of all, it's a poor frog that fails to croak his own pond. So I just want to also talk about that as being part of a national organization. We do have biannual national conferences that we've been a part of. The NAAAHR National Conference is going to be February 25th through the 28th. It's going to be broadcast out of the Hilton Norfolk in Norfolk, Virginia, but it is going to be a live stream virtual conference. Our speaker today, who has been our national diversity director, is going to be an integral part in that. And so you can continue. It's time for diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, respect, and peace. That is our theme. So we invite you to join us for that conference. Again, if you need more information, you can either go to NAAAHR.org or NAAAHRMilwaukee.org, and we would be glad to point you in the right direction. And finally, I would just like to say again, it's just been my delight to be part of this, part of this joint committee. They put up with me, so I'm thankful for that they were able to do that. And I just want to thank Darlene Austin and Kristen Strunk from the Milwaukee SHRM side, although Darlene also is a member of NAAAHR proudly. So she's like me, have my feet in both places. And I'd like to also thank Dorlisa Marshall for representing NAAAHR along with myself. So I just want to say to all of you, as I leave the stage, to sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride once we start the programming, because it's going to one that you're going to want to remember. Thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Christy.
Thanks, Al, and welcome everyone. My name is Christy Kintop, and I am the president of Metro Milwaukee SHRM. along with our great board of directors, which you see on the screen. We are very much committed to fulfilling our mission, which Al shared previously. And we're also very much committed to advancing diversity and inclusion, especially in Milwaukee, and really look forward to continuing our partnership. I want to thank everyone on our board, but I especially want to thank Darlene Austin, who is a longtime member of Metro Milwaukee SHRM, and give her a virtual round of applause. If we were in person, I would give her a cheers, but Darlene has been really committed to our D&I group and serving on the board. She recently decided to step down, and I'm very excited to introduce Desiree Carpenter. Desiree is taking the spot of DE&I director on our board, and we really look forward to working with Al and everyone at NAAAHR, as well as other partnerships in the community to advance the DE&I within Metro Milwaukee. I also want to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about Metro Milwaukee SHRM. Like Al mentioned, we are part of the National SHRM organization, and we have some great upcoming programs. You can visit our website, which is mmshrm.org, and register for any of our upcoming events. But I really want to call your attention to the third event on the screen, Stronger Together, Moving Forward in 2021. This is a virtual membership and networking event, and I would love for all of you to join me. We have a great speaker lined up to kick off 2021. We also have some fun trivia and some great networking. So we're very sad that due to the pandemic, we're not able to see all of our friends in person, but we really hope that you can join us to learn more about Metro Milwaukee SHRM and network with all of your colleagues. So we check out our website and hope that you can join us on January 28th. I wanted to take a minute to please ask you to rename yourself. So today's program has been approved for 2 hours of SHRM recertification credit and 2 hours of HRCI business credit. So if you have not already, please follow the instructions on the screen to rename yourself. This is how we are taking attendance for today's program and getting you those very valuable credits. We also ask that you please mute yourself during today's presentation, but feel free to have your cameras on. It helps our speakers to interact with you and see your reactions. And we also encourage you to use the chat feature to ask any questions. I have seen some great comments and hellos pop up in the chat, so please feel free to do that. And then today's session will be recorded, and the link will be available in the next few days. So please close out all of your other windows that might be distracting you, clear your workspace, and take the next couple hours to focus on the speaker and the insights that he has to share with you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to have the honor of introducing Dr. Shelton Goode. I just want to say thank you again for taking time out of your busy day today to attend today's presentation. This presentation is meant to invoke conversation, so please take a second to find the chat button at the bottom of your screen. At any time during the presentation, please feel free to chat with me directly with questions you have for Dr. Goode. We will have time at the end to address your questions and comments. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Shelton Goode. Dr. Shelton Goode is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Icarus Consulting. Icarus Consulting is a veteran-owned firm that helps companies build a diverse workforce and create an inclusive workplace. Dr. Goode has over 20 years of HR and D&I experience. He has held executive positions in several global companies. He has earned the reputation for being a strategic yet results-oriented leader whose expertise includes talent management, change management, and executive coaching. Dr. Goode was the first person awarded the Roosevelt Thomas Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Forbes magazine recently selected him, excuse me, it's a little early in the morning, as one of the top 10 D&I trailblazers in the country. He has also taught at several colleges and universities and is currently an adjunct professor with University's Corporate Education Department. Dr. Goode has published several books. His most recent book, Winter in America, The Impact of the 2016 Presidential Election on Diversity in Companies, Communities, and Country, is on the Outskirts Press bestsellers list. Dr. Goode has a new book coming out soon, Beyond Inclusion, Reimagining the Future of Workers in the Workplace. Dr. Goode has received his doctorate from the University of Alabama and has a master's degree in human resources from Troy University. Dr. Goode currently resides in the Atlanta area. We are excited and honored to have such a prominent speaker. Dr. Goode, we want to acknowledge your service to this country and say thank you. Dr. Goode, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning. I'm super excited to be back and be presenting at this Al was very modest in talking about setting up this joint meeting. It was something that we tried to establish as a model for the entire NAAAH HR organization. So Al, you talked about it being cold there in Milwaukee. Apparently some of your cold has made it here to Atlanta, and I'm trying to push it back to you. So y'all keep that cold weather there. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we even get started, let's set a little bit of context. This is going to be let's consider this a conversation rather than a presentation. I'm going to share with you some information, and then I'm going to invite my brother from another mother, Al, to join me on the virtual stage, and we're going to have a conversation. And so a couple of things. You're going to see a number of slides. Please don't worry about trying to keep up with the slides and copy everything off the slides. The entire deck will be made available to you in addition to the recording of the day's presentation. And then of course, when Al joins me on the virtual stage, we're going to invite you in to the conversation. And then of course, the conversation doesn't stop here today. We're going to invite everyone to connect with me if you're not already through LinkedIn. And of course, I'm going to give another plug to have you join us at least virtually for the NAAA annual conference, which will be next month. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't have to tell you that 2020 was an unprecedented year, and its impact on human resources and specifically how it impacts our ability to create diverse, equitable, and inclusive organizations. The ground has shifted under us. And so now as we enter into the dawn of 2021, it is a perfect time to talk about as we begin to emerge from the shadow of the pandemic, as we emerge from the shadow of the social justice unrest that we saw, and then a tense political environment. How will that affect HR? Specifically, how will it impact our ability to create an inclusive, diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace? But it just doesn't stop there, because anyone in diversity and inclusion knows that we do our work in partnership with talent acquisition, talent management, HRIS, our HR business partners, and it's going to take all of us to be able to make sure that our organizations, which have survived this combination of pandemic, to make sure that it thrives on the other side of it. So we're going to talk about some of those trends that are going to affect the future of work in the workplace. We want to make sure you understand some of the barriers and some of the challenges, and then identify some best practices that organizations should be looking at to make sure that they thrive on the other side of the pandemic. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I don't, again, if you look at, in order to understand 2020 and everything that has happened and everything that is going to happen, from this day forward, you have to look at the evolution of HR and back even when it was called, personnel administration, and know that there has been nothing but, if there's been one thing that's constant, it has been change. That is not new. What is new is, number one, the pace of change. And number two, what is driving the change? When we talk about the pace of change, up until I would say this year, it has been basically driven by technology. But as we move forward, I believe that the combination of the pandemic, the social justice movement, and the election, which is still having, even as we literally speak, ramifications, it is going to have impact on human resources in overall. It is specifically, we're going to have to navigate through some tough headwinds to continue the hard work that we have been doing to make our workplaces more diverse, more equitable, and more inclusive. And again, we're going to leave you with some, well, at least as I look into the crystal ball, this is not so much about what has happened in the past, but what we need to do going forward to continue to be successful and thrive. So let's look at some of the future challenges. We'll take a 50,000 foot level, and then we'll come down and talk about it, some of the challenges function by function. So again, we're talking about megatrends and talking about challenges. When I'm using the word megatrend, I'm talking about a disruption that is occurring. It's inevitable, and it's a trend that cannot be turned around. It's going to continue to have some sort of impact. And like the pandemic, it affects all areas of society. We're talking about the culture, we're talking about business, talking about politics, education, religion, the law, etc. And we always have megatrends, but never have we had the combination, the cocktail of megatrends that we are seeing that is impacting HR. And again, no sector has been spared. Sometimes some trends will impact one sector more than another. Sometimes it's the private sector. Sometimes it's government. Sometimes it's for-profit companies. Sometimes it's nonprofits. Sometimes it's driven by regulation or legislation. But we are finding all sectors being impacted by this incredible mix of the pandemics. And so we talked about change being constant. The other thing in our business that is a constant, and that's people. People are central to whatever strategic or operational challenges we face. That has not changed. We just need to keep that in mind. This has never been about numbers. This has never been so much about processes and policies and practices. It has always been people first. So as we look at some of these things that are driving change, particularly for HR, which is this big shift to a service and an IP based economy, technology and analytics, workforce planning, and the drive to be more cost effective. Those are the challenges. Those are the things that we've got to get better at in order for HR to continue to be that strategic business partner, for D&I to continue to be that strategic business partner. We are going to have to master and understand these challenges that we face. The tailwinds behind these things, obviously, is the pandemic, the social justice movement, and obviously the unprecedented political environment that we find ourselves in. So we'll come back to this. For the sake of time, one of the things I want to do, I want to save as much time as I can for the discussion that Al and I are going to have. So if I tend to jump past a slide, you will get the deck. But again, there are some things that I want to make sure we get to and then save as much time for the discussion. So cost effectiveness. At the top of mind for me, as I think about, as I talk to CEOs and I talk to our clients, they are under immense cost pressure. And I believe that HR, more so than any other business unit in the organization, and of course D&I, which is in a lot of organizations, a part of HR, is going to have to look at every new process, every new policy, every new practice, and find and ask yourself, does it add value or does it just drive up cost? So we're going to have to learn to be more agile and do more with less. That's not new. We're going to have to shrink some of our back offices even more. You're going to find yourself having to justify even more so and put together even stronger business cases for your HR initiatives. And then we're going to have to innovate, reinvent, and reimagine how we go about doing our work. This is critical, especially as I'm talking specifically to that NAAAH HR audience, which happens to be more junior and be earlier in their career. We're going to be counting on you and your fresh perspective and ideas to help us think about how we go about doing our work different. Again, the nature of work is going to change. And I'm going to be sharing some incredible statistics with you in a minute that says that employees, as a result of the pandemic, are coming back to work, whether it's virtually or whether it's physically, with a different mindset. And we have to be ready to deal with that different mindset. Here are these statistics that I wanted to share with you. I was a part of a 14-country global study that was done by The Economist. And the study surveyed almost 35 to 40,000 employees in 14 different countries. Just to let you know, this is not just Milwaukee, this is not just North America, this is global. And as a result of everything that has happened, 80% of more workers want to work from home. That's probably not new. What is new is this: a lot of those employees who always wanted to work from home are now working from home and do not want to come back into the physical workspace. 80%. So even those companies that are thinking about that, how are you going to, in an effort to make sure you have an inclusive workplace and an equitable workplace, how are we going to deal with that 80% of people if you bring them back, that knowing that they don't want to come back? The global study that was done was supplemented by a PricewaterhouseCoopers survey. And when they looked at just here in North America, they asked the question, I will trade salary for more flexibility and autonomy. And on a Likert scale of 1 to 5.0, and 5.0 being strongly agree, the results were 4.3. People are willing to give up money to have more flexibility and autonomy around their job. This is critical. Why? Because diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to mean something different than what we've been thinking about in the past. For those of you who thought that diversity was just about increasing the number of women and people of color in the workplace, or it was always about the numbers. Okay, yes, it is about numbers, but is it about new numbers now? And I will tell you that people want, if they're going to challenge us and say, you want an inclusive workplace, then give me more flexibility and autonomy about how I do my work and when I do my work. 60% or more think that if I'm with you 7 months or more, I'm being loyal. Don't expect that I'm going to be with you 5 years, and you can forget about 30. Like I said, 2 out of 3 employees want more flexibility around their work hours. You say, what does that mean, Dr. Good? Let me sign on early in the morning, do some of my work. Let me sign off, get my kids to school, get them to daycare. I'm a caregiver at home. Let me make sure my home and house is cool. Let me sign back on later in the day to finish my work. Let me have more flexibility about my work hours. And then 9 out of 10 workers, they want rewards. I believe the number one reward, total reward, based on a global study, is that employees want more benefits around caregivers. And we're not talking about caregivers for their children. We're talking about caregivers for adults. So these are major paradigm shifting numbers that say the workforce coming back to work in 2021 and beyond, after the pandemic, virtually or physically, is a different worker. It is a completely different worker. And so again, we've got this big shift to service. And so the bottom line here is that employee expectations are changing. They are changing, have changed, and will continue to change. The number one thing that employees are going to expect coming back to work, in addition to autonomy and flexibility, is greater transparency around certain things about the business. And so I am sharing with all of my clients and all of the people that we do work with, you're going to have to be more transparent about things like your employee engagement survey results, even things around your demographic makeup. 9 out of 10 companies do not share their demographic makeup with their own employees. Employees are left to imagine or perceive what they believe the makeup to be. And it's always, they always believe that the demographics of the workforce is far smaller in terms of women and people. Their perception about the percentage of women and people in the color in the workforce is always 2 to 3 standard deviations smaller than what the actual percentage is. And that's because organizations do not share their demographics. And so transparency is going to be huge when people come back to work. Again, I'm just giving you these challenges that HR, your CEO, your business partners are going to be coming to you and say, people want to have all these courageous conversations. What do I want to do? People are now talking about religion, politics, and things that we told them before they couldn't talk about. Now they want to talk about them. They're going to be coming to you. Everyone that's a part of this meeting today, are you ready to help your organizations thrive in this new environment that they're going to be? So let's talk about how we need to address some of these changes, 50,000 foot, and then we're going to go function by function, because I know we've got some people here in comp, we've got some people in talent acquisition, some in talent management, some in D&I. And so we're going to talk about what this looks like for your function by function. Number one, HR is going to have to be more scalable. We're going to have to learn how to scale down and scale up based on what's happening with the business. How do we do that? We're going to have to look at the mix of the workforce. How many part-times, how many full-times, how many contractors, how many consultants. You're going to have to look at the mix, because the mix of the percentage of full-time equivalents is probably going to go down. And so you're going to have to be prepared to maybe have to shift talent from one business unit or region to another in an effort to reduce labor cost. So that's one of the things that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. We are going to have to focus on things like goals and bonus criteria. We're going to have to get better at talking in the business of talking and communicating in the language of business. If we're not talking about revenue generation and cost reduction, we're going to find ourselves marginalized because the business is going to be expecting HR to help reduce costs and also increase revenue. So let's look, those are some big challenges to HR overall. So let's go function by function and let's talk about some predictions. And these are, let me make sure you understand the context for this. Here in Atlanta, we have a number of robust HR and D&I organizations. We have the Atlanta Diversity Management Advisory Group. We have the Georgia Diversity Council. We have a very large SHRM chapter. We have a very large and active NAAAH HR chapter, and we have a HR leadership forum, and we have an HR executive roundtable. So we have an abundance of talent and resources. I surveyed all of those, the leaders, HR leaders in all of those organizations. And I said, tell me, how are you going to respond to the pandemic, to social justice, to the election? How are you going to be leading your organizations? I basically gave them a survey, and here are some of the results that they shared with me about what they are going to do in terms of leading their organizations. I will be giving to Al into Milwaukee SHRM that actual study and white paper and let them share that with everyone that's in attendance today. So let's look at each function. Let's look at my function, diversity and inclusion. I am and have always been either an HR exec or a chief diversity officer for a number of large organizations. I'm also the chief diversity officer for the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources, and I run a D&I firm, and we have clients across the country and around the globe. So let me share with you the challenges we're facing in D&I first. As we move from inclusion, what's beyond inclusion, people ask me? Equity. Equity is the new transparency, is the new currency going forward. We've been working on diversity. We've been working on inclusion, but are organizations equitable? Are your practices, policies, and behaviors equitable? And in order to do that, you've got to have alignment between your practices and HR practices, policies, and your work processes and leadership behaviors in order to have an equitable organization. Let me give you an example of what equity looks like in an organization in the midst of a pandemic. I had a CEO ask me, and he says, Doc, I'm looking at I don't want to fire anyone. I don't want to have to furlough anyone. So to avoid doing that, I'm looking at a 20% across the board pay cut for my organization. What do you think? What I told him was, I don't think that's a good idea. And, of course, there was some interesting words exchanged, but he said, hey, tell me why. And I says, it's not equitable. He says, tell me what you mean. I says, you have a female working in your customer care center that's probably making less than $15 an hour. She has kids at home. She has increased costs during the time of COVID. She's probably a single mom, or even if she's married, her spouse may have lost his job. And you're going to ask that person to take a 20% pay cut. Meanwhile, you make 7 figures, your direct reports make 7 figures, their direct reports make six figures, and it's just not equitable that you're going to ask that individual contributor to take a 20% pay cut. Needless to say, he backed off of it, and the CEO and his direct reports took a 25% pay cut. Their direct reports took a 20. Their direct reports took a 15. Their direct reports took a 10. And no individual contributors had to take a pay cut of any kind. That's what equity is. And that's just one example. I could go on and on, but a lot of organizations are not ready for the concept of equity. We'll come back to that in my discussion with Al. In order to move from inclusion and equity, we've got to move from the way things work in an organization to the way people feel about the way things work around an organization. And people, equity, I can stay on this all day. But as I look beyond inclusion and I'm thinking about the future of workers in the workplace, we've got to have a more, we've got to look at equity. Again, we've got people at work right now, physically at work, and we've got some people working at home. How do you address that inequity? And so again, we'll come back to that. Al, be ready for that when we have our discussion. 89% of companies rate inclusion as an important business objective, but only 14% are even taking proactive, intentional steps to create and sustain an inclusive workplace. So as we think about getting beyond inclusion, we still got work to do just with inclusion. But those companies that do focus on inclusion outperform the companies that don't. Over the last 5 years, there's all kind of data. It's overwhelming that the companies that take proactive, intentional efforts to have a more inclusive workplace will have better results than companies in their industry that do not. And again, we'll share a study with you that will provide all of that data. Looking at diversity and inclusion again, organizations are I'm glad that a lot of organizations that are focusing on inclusion, those that are, you got 22% looking at creating a different employee work experience. 23% are looking at making sure that their strategies align with the company's value. And 14% that are focusing on inclusion are spending 14% of their efforts making sure inclusion is embedded in decision-making, problem solving, communication, conflict resolution. And so, the story is not all bad. There are companies taking inclusive actions, taking actions to create an inclusive workplace and sustain it. And this gives you a snapshot of what those companies are focusing on. And of course, if that's not enough data for you, if you go to Glassdoor at any point at any time, this data is from 2018, but it probably hasn't changed much. People want, when they come into an organization, they want to have a career. They want to know that there's a chance for them to advance and be all they can be. Right behind that, they're looking for inclusive organizations. And whether or not an organization is an organization where people are respected, valued, and engaged, that's my definition for inclusion. That is more important to employees coming into the workforce than compensation and benefits combined. So if that's not enough, if that's not enough data, this right here, your future employees, the people that you're trying to recruit, are going to expect to come into an organization where everyone is respected, everyone is valued, and everyone is engaged. So that's diversity and inclusion. One of the things that I'm excited about is also, I hear a lot of HR organizations saying, I'm going to use this opportunity to look at my structure. And so let me share with you what they're talking about. you've got your typical top-down hierarchical organization. And then you've got, that's the way things were. And then you start moving to this more, functional teams. And now what you're going to have, I think, is you're going to you're going to see a lot more HR organizations begin to get out of their silos, this talent acquisition silo, this talent management silo, this total rewards and comp and benefits and D&I. And you're going to see people represented by these circles, people coming together to work on HR problems, projects, and initiatives. And you're going to find D&I people working shoulder to shoulder with talent management, talent acquisition. And I think you're going to see that be 90% of the day-to-day operation of HR versus this functional silo operations. At least the people on the survey, that's what they told me that they're going to be experimenting with, is looking at more project-based, not silo-based or departmental-based work. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to look and play out. So if you look at structure today, at the top of that list is you got your hierarchical business function, talent management, total rewards, and now they're talking about tomorrow going to more projects, putting together more squads. That's one of the buzzwords I've heard. Putting together more teams, and looking to look at how you have a more shared service model. And then you've got some other things that you see there on the slide. But I'm real excited to see how this is going to look as we go look at 2021 and beyond. You say, well, why would they do that, Dr. Goode? When I interviewed some of the people after the survey, they says that HR, we talked about this for a long time, that HR has to be a people consulting group. But they're saying now more than ever, HR.
I promised you something, and you're not letting it go.
That HR is going to have to be an internal people consulting group, and that HR is going to have to focus on productivity and innovation. And that we've got some people that's not on mute, but that's okay. And you're going to have to. If you're on, yeah, thanks. Okay, they're on mute now. Great. And that HR is going to have to be looked at as a people consulting group, and they're going to be asked by the organization to not only be proactive and identify strategic people problems, but come to the table with solutions that will not just solutions, but solutions that will either increase value, increase revenue, or reduce costs, just like any external consultant would be asked to do. And the other thing that when I interviewed these HR leaders, they said they're going to have to shift a lot of your day-to-day tactical stuff from HR and from HR business consultants, even from talent acquisition, to HR, to managers, and that HR managers using technology, some of that technology being handheld devices, are going to have to take on some of the work that HR has done in the past. I know that that's going to be a change management challenge for HR, because most of your business managers, your frontline leaders, are going to say, I've got enough on my plate. I don't want to have to do your work too. We're going to have to convince them this is not HR work. This is your work. We've been doing it for you. Now you're going to have to pick up some of it. That's going to be a major, major change management effort. Why is this important? If HR is going to have to scale back, if HR is going to have to be more strategic, it's going to have to leverage technology and put that technology in the hands of managers, so managers can do some of that tactical stuff. HR is going to not be, one of the things that we have been criticized for is always looking back. We're going to have to get better at predictive modeling, not just running reports that show what was or what currently is, but we're going to have to get better at running models and using technology to do more predictive work, especially in the area of workforce planning. And you're going to have to be internal consulting, and because the dollars may not be there to hire an external consultant to come in and do this for you. So this is going to be huge. Let's look at talent acquisition. You know, I think that talent acquisition is going to be under increased pressure to hire the right person for the right job at the right time and do it faster. And I know that talent acquisition has always been under the metric for talent acquisition has always been speed to hire. But that pressure is only going to increase. And again, you're going to have to leverage technology to shorten the cycle even shorter and get the right person for the right job into the organization at the right time. That means you're not going to have to be able to do 18 screenings. You're not going to have to be able to do 15 round robin interviews. You're going to have to look at how do you get more comfortable, confident, and competent at hiring the right person for the right job at the right time and doing it faster. So speed is the big takeaway for talent acquisition, but there is emerging technology that will allow you to do it. So whether it's applicant tracking systems, whether there's applicant matching systems, like, you know, the talent acquisition version of Match.com, you're going to have to use a combination of all of these things to shorten the cycle, to shorten the hiring cycle. One chief human resources officer that I talked to says we're looking at getting past screenings and all of that, maybe going to more online assessments, maybe one interview with the hiring manager, and then making a decision. Being able to take as much as 10 to 15 days out of the hiring cycle. HRIS is going to be data, is going to have to be our friend even more so than in the past. So get on first name basis with your folks in IT, in your HRIS department, because you're going to need more real-time data. Managers are going to need more real-time data, and you're going to have to help have your HRIS team coach you on how to do and use predictive metrics so that you can identify things like, for an example, who's going to quit and what are the hiring factors up front that will predict success and retention. So again, get on first name basis. I believe that the days of spreadsheets and pivot tables are going to have to be replaced with more advanced technology. The bigger companies, I think this will not be as much of a challenge as it will be for smaller companies, some of which have not even transitioned to Workday yet. And then, of course, obviously, everything is going to be pushed to the cloud so that, again, your HR managers, who we are saying is going to do some of our HR work, we're going to have to get that technology in their hands so that they can make faster, on-time decisions. And so I think that even Workday and your more advanced people systems are going to be replaced in 3 years or less with AI and more advanced HR systems to help drive the business. Talent management, another one of my favorite areas. When I interviewed, and there were over 250 people that participated in the study, that we did. With this, and then this is also backed up by a study that Deloitte did in 2018. 58% of companies are redesigning or planning to look at their whole career models. 83% expect to have an open or highly flexible career model in the next 3 to 5 years. And 67% are going to be focusing on how do they promote more horizontal and project-based career progression versus this vertical model. Obviously, everybody wants a promotion. Everybody manages and evaluates their career success on how many vertical moves they've had within a company, within their career. And companies are looking at how do we promote career development and career success and shift the paradigm to more horizontal movement. That's going to be interesting because what we found is that 70% or more of millennials, are going to live longer, and they're going to have 10 to 12 jobs by the time they reach 50. You're going to have 29% of companies believe careers in their company are going to be 10 plus years, but 44% say less than 5. So you've got a lot of things, a lot of paradigms that are shifting in terms of what does a career even mean in a company. This is going to be incredibly important because as we talk about what inclusion looks like in a company, it's going to look different because I believe this whole thing of what a career looks like will be different. And so therefore, we're going to have to do some things. We're going to have to target our retention effort so that you just don't look at all turnover, but you may have to focus on your high impact employees and reduce your regrettable turnover. And you're going to have to hold managers accountable for the cost of losing people that you've invested a lot of money in, a lot of money in terms of recruiting them and developing them. I think a key metric should be going forward, looking at managers and what is the percentage of high potential performers, emerging leaders, or high potential leaders did they lose in a particular performance cycle. Retention is going to be is always been critical, but retention of your top performers, I think, is going to take on a new sense of urgency. Performance management, I find this very interesting because a lot of companies are looking at changing their performance management system. And one of the things I'm excited about is that a lot of them are looking at how do we embed diversity and inclusion into performance management and talent management strategies. That is the way, if we're going to have all of these inclusive initiatives, how do we hold managers responsible for making sure that they sustain all of that work that we do? So you have some companies that's at level 1 and performance management is still disconnected from diversity and inclusion and talent management, but you have some companies at various levels. The most advanced ones have a formal accountability around diversity and inclusion in terms of what it means to be a successful leader in an organization. Put another way, your most advanced organizations have said you cannot be a successful leader if you're not comfortable, confident, and competent managing and leading diverse work teams and creating an inclusive workplace for those work teams. Again, when you talk to managers, they will tell you that, the biggest problem I have is not the problems I know, it's the problems I don't know. And so, help me figure out and clear up my blind spots so that I can get better at addressing those concerns I don't know about. And so I think that's a interesting call out from our managers who are asking for our help. Questions in the future that I believe that will predict high performance, and this is just not me, this is HR leaders. You're looking at the questions here, and I don't know if companies have these already in their employee engagement survey, but I'm telling my clients, I think we need to include questions like this or similar to this so we can predict whether or not a work team, in fact, is inclusive, and with the assumption that a team that is inclusive is going to be more productive. And so this is something that I believe is a low-hanging fruit, because organizations are constantly looking at their employee surveys and tweaking them with questions and things like that. And so fair treatment, whether or not I believe my teammates have my back, yeah, I'm allowed to make a mistake. I can miss a shot, but my teammates will still give me the ball, and that they will still have trust in me. So these are some questions that I predict that I am encouraging my clients, and I believe HR leaders are going to be looking at questions like this about performance. And then let me go past this one for the sake of time and get to total rewards, because I want to spend just a little bit more time here, because going back to that global study that we talked about, I was real shocked about some of the statistics that came out of there. But millennials, when they talk about total rewards, and we've never talked about fairness and equity and inclusion as a total reward. It always was looked at as something different. But when employees are saying, I'm choosing a company based on how inclusive they are, maybe we need to look at equity, fairness, and community as a total reward, not just something that's a purview of diversity and inclusion. And so, let's look at that third bullet where it says 77% of millennials actively take part in volunteerism and charity work. And they want to come and work for companies that are going to give them an opportunity to spend time doing things that are important to them. 88% of millennials believe businesses can be a major force for positive change. So I believe you're going to see increased pressure from millennials on the business to do things in the communities where the company works, where the company's employees work, live, and play, that the company should do something to make that community better. And that's an expectation. And I'm not sure if companies realize how strong this and how important this is to millennials. And so the other thing, I talked about this global study a number of times. What we've found out is that people are working like crazy during this pandemic. 80% or more of all companies. No, let's don't look at that one. I want to go to that top one. The average US worker now spends 25% of their day reading or answering emails. One of the things, and you see a number of statistics here, the Economist study, that was a global study. Again, we'll share that, we'll make that available to you. They found that the average global employee, regardless of country, is working 14.7 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's just not sustainable. And so we've seen some stress as a result of that resembles post-traumatic stress syndrome. We're seeing employees, even before the pandemic, we've seen employees not use all of their vacation, and workers were already on this trend of working more and taking less vacation and time off, and then the pandemic just tipped it all over the scale. there is a consequence that comes from all of that. And so I believe that that we've already seen, even though you've got all this product, you've gotten all these people working, it's not necessarily been as productive as people think. And so what you have now is people that are just more stressed. They're working more, not necessarily more productive. They are just more stressed. And I think that we're going to see an increased use of employee assistance program. I think we're going to see an increase in workers' comp claims. And I think that managers, and again, going back to that global study, one of the number one things that was recommended is that managers look for ways to proactively engage with their employees and give them permission to unplug. Give them permission to unplug. Give them just like we used to do back in Friday, when we were back at work physically, you had jeans day or you had a half a day or whatever. Why not give teams and say, hey, look, everybody on Friday, 2 o'clock, unplug. Don't plug back in until Monday, and give people permission to unplug. And again, I just think that you're going to see increased number of companies that are going to have to be more proactive about getting into the wellness and the well-being space. Let's go past this just for the sake of time. And so I'm thinking that when we are looking at total rewards, I really, really believe that we're going to have to look at wellness and well-being we got to look at that and maybe beef up that reward and not just beef it up to offset the stress, but I think that we need, if we're going to be truly inclusive and equitable, that we probably need to make well-being and wellness a part of that equation. Let's look at L&D and then we'll close it out. So Al, we're going to be coming to you to join me. Real excited about L&D, but I think that companies are going to have to invest even more in their L&D function. 41% of companies have used technology in conjunction with their L&D. 77% of these companies believe technology is creating better or different jobs. 50% are retraining workers to enable them to leverage, to use the new technology. And 67% of companies believe they must continuously reskill employees to stay competitive. And so the L&D function is not, I believe we're going to be moving away from less soft skills to more actual L&D, more training that's going to be focused on getting employees whose jobs have been impacted by technology, reskilling them to use technology better. As you look at L&D as it pertains to millennials, millennials want an inclusive workplace. They want a place where they can be all they can be, and training and development is a key driver of this as well. And so the more time that you invest in your millennial workforce, I believe that is going to increase your return on investment in terms of being able to retain those employees. Again, looking forward, 75% of the workforce is going to be made up of millennials, and 45% of tell us that they are not getting any leadership development at all. So we're going to have to, the companies are going to have to invest more in leadership development, especially if you want to retain your millennial workforce. We're going to have to go from this big macro learning to micro learning. Give me 20 minutes or less of some training that I need that's going to help me be successful in something right now. That's going to be, we're going to have to leverage YouTube videos, coding samples, and other tools. And you're not going to, I think we're going to find ourselves moving away from these 8-hour, 4-hour, and even 2-hour workshops to moving to this more micro learning. And let's go past this. This is just a nice chart to show you that as we invest in more micro learning, it's going to increase performance and reduce and increase retention. But the key thing, I think, is that the companies that are most admired are the companies that invest the most in diversity and inclusion, followed by the companies that invest in learning and development. And so employees really give, think highly of their company when their company invests in them. And so, you know, as we think about leaders of the future, everyone needs to be considered a leader. We need to, I think we need to, you know, develop the whole team. We need to develop them faster, and we need to reward managers for developing people. I believe if I was the CEO of a company and they says, you know, Dr. Goode, what's the one thing I can do in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? I would say hold managers responsible for leading diverse work teams, creating an inclusive workplace for those work teams, but do so by holding those managers accountable for, excuse me, for developing their people. So, Al, I told you it was going to be coming to you. I'm going to have you join me here on the stage in a sec. Some final thoughts. I gave you a lot of information, but again, this presentation is going to be recorded. This whole deck is going to be provided. I would encourage you to continue to stay connected or connect with me on LinkedIn, and we're going to continue this conversation. In this short time that I've had today, I simply was trying to help you. I'm trying to give you a crystal ball and say, look into that crystal ball and say, as a result of the confluence of major crises, the pandemic, which was both health related, financial related, and emotional related, followed by the social justice and the most tense, disruptive political election we've ever had in this country. How does that impact HR? And what do I need to do to get in front of it? Wouldn't we all love to have a crystal ball so that we can go to our business leaders and say, hey, I think we've got some challenges, but I've got a solution. Solutions that are going to not only solve the problem, but are going to also increase revenue or reduce costs. That was my role in presenting you this information. Again, we've got several additional tools and resources we're going to provide to you. There are some great books out there that I think you should consider. You see those books here on the stage, on the screen. If you don't have the budget to pick up these, we'll be providing you with a number of studies and white papers that was used to put together this presentation, as well as this deck. And then, of course, let's continue the conversation and figure out how we can partner together to help each other, help our organizations thrive as we emerge from the shadows of these crippling pandemics. If there's one thing I'm excited about is that, yes, 2020 was a tough year, but I believe 2021, we have an opportunity to leverage those crises as a platform for change. This is a time to go to your business units and your business leaders with those ideas and the business cases. And if you've ever had a good idea, this is the time to take it forward to your organization, because I think you're going to find that they're going to have a welcoming ear to hear your ideas, especially if they can increase revenue, reduce costs, and address some of the challenges. If you want to continue this conversation with me, here's all of my contact information. And at this point, I'm going to invite my brother from another mother, Al, to join me on the virtual stage, and let's have a conversation. And Delisa, if you'll pop in with the questions and stuff. So Al, I've been talking. I need to drink some water and comments. Anything you want to question? First question you got?
Wow, Shelton. Before we lead off into the questions, let me just tee things up about it. I'm just really sitting here in awe. One thing I want to say is, I have to say personally, is that Shelton and I, besides being diversity practitioners together, we're both veterans in the military. And one of my heroes in the military was Colin Powell, who I call a soldier. In the field of D&I look to Shelton Goode as the leader of D&I practitioners. In other words, he's the soldier for those who are on the battlefield for D&I. And whether you know it or not, we're all sitting with a thought leader throughout this country and this world, and getting these things out of his mind, what he's just shared with us, are just very precious. And I don't say that just to blow him up, but I say that because that's the realization of what he's sharing with us, of how fast things have transformed in 2020. And Shelton, also, my fireplace is in the other room. I'm in a different room, but just let's pretend that you're in front of my fireplace. Yeah. You and I love to have these fireside chats. We've had them at 10 o'clock at night before. So I'm comfortable with you on having these this fireside chat with you, and also bringing in what's in the minds of all the people that are out with her today, because we have a lot to unpackage, and we could sit here for the next whole rest of the day and unpackage everything that you have. I just want to tee it up a little bit and say that what I got out of everything was the word transformation, as what I've kind of really seen. How are organizations and how are H&R and D&I professionals going to transform themselves to meet the needs going forward? So I just want to put that out there. I also want to, because you said it was important also, and I saw it in the chat room as well too, really talking about going beyond inclusion and really going into equity. A lot of people are getting into this D&I space right now. I'm looking at, a lot of them are looking at this as not for real, but as the flavor of the month. They'll crash and burn. You know, so what you're talking about is building sustainable programs for our organizations. So let me just throw one thing out, first of all, and all that you talked about moving forward in this post-COVID environment. And I know you have the ear of a lot of CEOs. What is keeping, in regards to all the CEOs, up at night, and what's also keeping them up at night in regards to their HR executives and teams being able to handle what we're getting ready to go into?
So, Al, let me address your question, and then please don't let me answer your question without making a couple of comments, particularly about this venue and this format that you've set up. I don't think people realize how unique what we are doing right now is, this joint NAAAH HR and SHRM meeting. And then second of all, let me say, I don't have all the answers. I've got people in this meeting like Bill Shackelford that's here with me in Atlanta. Bill is, I have a lot of advisors and people I go to and talk with. Bill is one of those people. We've got Tim White, who is, you know, I can't tell you how many people he's working with and companies he's working with, especially in the area of bias. You got Thela Thatch, Dr. Thatch out in LA. We've got some great people here. And so the fact that you've been able to do this meeting and us doing it virtually, I think I know we've always done this there in Milwaukee. I presented before and I thought it was great then, but virtually we're able to bring some different people in the conversation. So I hope everybody will allow me to bring those people into the conversation and answer some of these questions. But the number one thing that's keeping CEOs up at night, and I can say this from firsthand, and I'll even share a couple of the CEOs because they said they don't mind. The number one thing that's challenging them is they don't have all the answers. Is that the pandemic, the social justice, everything has created an environment where they are uncomfortable They are uncomfortable being uncomfortable because they don't have all the answers. No one does. And so the number one thing that I'm telling them is be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Be more comfortable with being vulnerable, with being transparent. Be authentic and say, I don't have all the answers. Reach out to your fellow CEOs and your chief human resource officers and we'll figure it out. But don't try to bluff your way through it. Don't try to throw out some stupid statement that you're going to have to later retract. Slow down, take a deep breath, and realize that I know you get paid a lot of money to see a problem, fix it. That's what a CEO's checklist to-do list looks like. See a problem, fix it. See a problem, fix it. But we're in an environment now where it's not that simple. Every day, the ground is shifting under our feet. So I'm trying to get them to not change, but adapt their leadership style. You have to realize most of these men and women have an MBTI profile of ENTJ. They are drivers, they are fixers, they are decision makers and problem solvers. And they like to do it quickly, oftentimes without having all of the information. That's what their board of directors pay them for. That's what their shareholders expect them to do. But they're not comfortable, Al. They're not comfortable. And so that's the number one challenge. They have to get out of their own way. And they have to realize that they have a team and an ecosystem that they can rely on. The chief human resources officers who have to be that person, that HR leadership team that often has to be that partner. They are feeling uncomfortable because, let's be candid, sometimes HR has been executors. It's like, okay, we gotta, the leadership wants us to do this. Here's how we're going to execute it. And now the HR team has to go in and think and be much, much more strategic. And we throw that word around all the time, but I'm really talking about me being more specific and saying, okay, here is what I think could be an issue. Here is what I think we should do about it. You know how hard it is to convince a senior leader to do something about an issue that hasn't even manifested itself yet? And that is difficult. And so that's the two challenges. So again, I'm trying to get HR to think like a futurist. And I know right now they are 100% covered up with COVID and trying to decide, how long do we stay out of work? How do we keep people safe? How many head count can I keep? Do we need to count more or reduce more head count? What's my mix of my workforce? I know they're covered up with the tactical day-to-day, but that's not going to help the company get on the other side of the pandemic and thrive on the other side of the pandemic. This is a time to say, you know what? For a long time, I've been thinking we need to, let me give you an example. I'm going to tell you about a utility who for years that said, we can't take customer service reps and let them work from home. They said it for years. It wasn't a technology issue. The technology was there. They says, oh, it's not fair to let them work from home and everybody else can't. We can't, if we can't trust them to work from home because how are we going to monitor their performance? They had all these reasons of why they couldn't do it. That same utility now has 50% of their customer care center working from home. What I told them was, that's great. Why don't you now, as a performance management metric, say, not everybody's going to continue to be able to work from home. Only the top performers are going to be able to work from home. And then we're going to let the top performers pick their shift. We're going to let the top performers use that, take it to the next level and use it as a way to enhance performance. And here's the issue. They says, well, Doc, how are we going to bring those people back? I says, you don't. You're not going to get those customer service reps that ever want to come back into the physical workplace. They're already tied to a phone. So we've got to get out of our own way, and then we've got to help our companies get out of their own way. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't.
That is such a great point. And I have a number of questions in queue for you and Al once you're ready. So just
We're
let me
ready.
know.
Just
All
jump
right.
in. Don't wait for us. Because
Okay.
Al and I can talk to each other or talk to a wall. So don't wait for us.
Love that. So our first question is, my company is hesitant to share the demographic makeup as well as slow to communicate courageous and difficult messages broadly. By the time we convince the CEO, the moment has passed. How
Mhm.
can I get in front of this?
It depends on who you are in the organization. I will tell you, from a D, E, and I, imagine this: companies want to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive. They send out one of their questions on the employee engagement survey is, I trust senior leadership. I've never seen an employee engagement survey that says leadership trust employees. This thing about it's a risk to share demographics, it's a greater risk not to share the demographics. And I know a lot of HR folks are going to push back. And I know right now people are rolling their eyes and they want to kick me out the room. But I'm telling you, when we go into companies and we do, and we're asked, our employee survey engagement survey results, we can't believe we're not making any progress. Our lowest rated items are the same. And then when we peel back the onion, we've got people of color and women answering even 2 or 3 standard deviations lower than the norm or white males. We don't know what to do. I take a deep breath and say, I'll tell you what, we're going to do some focus groups, but the number one issue with surveys and focus groups, people don't believe you're going to do anything with the data. People fill in the blanks. If you don't tell them what the facts are, they're going to fill in their own blanks. I know a company, I've got a client whose workforce is 43% women. And of the women, 62% are women of color. Their survey says, on their survey, women of color are underrepresented in the organization. How can that be? How can the facts be one thing and the perception be something different? So once we went a little bit deeper, we did find that women of color are underrepresented on leadership. But if you ask women of color in the organization, they will tell you we're grossly underrepresented in the organization. If the organization simply shared the demographics, we've got so many of this, we've got so many of that. I'm not even getting into goals and quotas and things like that. I'm just, let me hush because y'all not feeling me. Bill, unmute, and you've done, Bill, we talk about this all the time. Unmute and tell people, am I telling the truth here or what? Unmute yourself, Bill. Shackelford. You still on mute, Bill. You still on mute. Well, Bill, if you come,
Bill, you're on mute.
I'm there now. I'm there now. Yes, you are exactly right. What we do, for the last 30 years, we've been doing cultural audits and employee surveys. We do the whole cultural assessment of the organization, collecting the data you just mentioned. The survey plus the focus group is critical. When you get that data and give it back to the organization, they can see where the gaps are. But that very next step is critical as well. We added on a strategic planning session at the tail end. We bring the leaders in, we bring a team or task force in as well, and have them see the data, look at the data, see what it says to them, and then take that data apart and say, what are we going to do with it? Short-term, mid-term, long-term goals in order to address these issues. If you have one area that is really, really critical, Black females or Black employees say we're not fully represented or whatever, let's really focus on that. Let's put a plan in place to address that. And when we do our survey up front, we use it as a pre and post survey. We're going to make sure that in particular is going to be higher the next time we do this survey. So you focus on that, you check it midterm, you check it near the end, you do your post survey, you know it's going to be better because you worked on it. So when you have the data is critical. People start by trying to change people's mind and perceptions of leaders in particular by talking about the issue and saying, and when employees say that, no, leaders are changed by data. When you have hard, firm data and they can see where the gaps are, and not just overall for the organization, but be able to cut it by demographic groups, by male, by female, by function, by years of service. At that point, you've got them sold. When they see it themselves, they say, okay, why? And the folks will tell you why, And then what we're going to do about it is what your next step is.
Okay. Delisa, we're gonna,
Delisa, in the interest of moderating this, and you're my co-person here, take moderator's privilege here a little bit, but I know Shelton wanted me to make sure before we left here, and I think it's on the minds of what I saw in the chat on some people of talking about equity, which is beyond inclusion, and manager accountability, especially to lead a diverse workforce. Delisa, do you have any questions that are in that particular area that have been brought up in regard to that? Because I think that's something very, very important that I saw was coming up on how to do that. And then I saw where companies said that they're starting to do things. Any questions in regard to that particular subject? Because that was very important. Shelton wanted me to make sure that got brought back up.
Okay, related to equity?
Yes, related to equity or either manager accountability.
I have questions related to both.
Okay.
One of the questions is, can we get leaders in the organization to understand the concept of equity and the importance within the organization? How can we explain the why?
Yeah. So again, let's make sure we all understand what we're talking about with equity. And some of you may have saw not an animation, but there is this picture of these three kids. It's been going around for years of trying to look over the fence to see a baseball game. And in one case, you've got the tall guy, a tall kid who can see over the fence. You've got the other kid that's standing on 2 boxes, and then another one that's standing on 3. And so, for years, we have focused on things like equality and equal opportunity. So let's be clear about that. And because that's one of the headwinds, trying to shift from the concept of equality and equal opportunity to shift to this thing, to this idea of equity. And so I shared with you in the previous example about the CEO who wanted to have the cross the board pay cut. When you're talking about equity, it's not what you do. You can't focus on what you do. You have to focus on the outcome you're trying to achieve. If the outcome in that example is to not make sure that you don't reduce any headcount, but you need to reduce cost, sure, you could do a 20% across the board, but the outcome of doing so is going to have a disproportionate impact on that individual contributor making less than $15 an hour than it would be that CEO who's making 6 figures without bonus. Equity is about thinking about what is the outcome you want to achieve. And that's what's so hard for, candidly, HR, and even more so for leaders, because sometimes they don't think about what is the short and long-term outcome that you want. If you want people, if you're moving away from a traditional retirement system, and one of the things you want to do is encourage and incent people to invest in their own future retirement, and you offer some sort of 401k contribution, I know companies that have not even examined what is the contribution rate of their employees to their own future retirement. One company that finally I convinced to do it, when they took a look at it, they found out that 72% of people of color were not investing in their 401k, even though the company was offering 85 cents for every dollar invested, up to 6%. Why were people leaving that amount of money on the table? Well, I don't know the answer, but it is incumbent upon the company to say, you've got an inequitable outcome there. And so again, this concept of equity is probably deeper than we have time to talk about, but people ask me all the time, you say beyond inclusion, what's beyond inclusion? Equity. Equity is beyond inclusion, but I'd rather say more, we're going to talk about that a little bit deeper in another day. Other questions from people?
Yes. Do you have suggestions on how to help leaders and HR business partners be vulnerable with each other so that they can learn together?
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that one. Al, I'm either let you or I'm going to let our newly Dr. Thela Thatch out on the West Coast answer it. Oh, you got your PhD. Don't be shaking your head. You've got your PhD in this stuff. Al, vulnerability. What would it take for people to be more vulnerable and more authentic?
Well,
Wow.
before Thela, hi Thela.
Hi, good to see you.
Before I let her take a crack at it, I feel in order to create that, the organization has to work hard and show their intention to creating the culture that makes that welcome. And that goes into creating an inclusive culture. And so part of creating inclusive in culture is making sure that, first of all, that it's empowering culture. It's also a safe culture. And it's also one that values respect. I think when you start doing that and allowing those opportunities, and we're right in the middle of our organization of doing that, that it's saying that it's okay to be vulnerable. I've recently had a lot of white men started sharing with us in that environment right now, because we've created the environment, and the things that are coming up about how they feel, especially in a female dominated organization like we have, is key to helping them be more vulnerable, to feel comfortable in that vulnerability to talk. You've got to set the stage. You've got to walk the walk and not talk the talk, just to show that you're doing that. It's the intentionality of putting that in place. And then you have to train your leaders to do that with their staff as well, too, and say that's an expectation of you being a culturally competent leader. So first you work with the leaders, and then you start letting that permeate throughout the organization. And it really starts to work. I'm really having good success with that vulnerability being dropped, starting from the CEO all the way down to the frontline staff. Dr. Thela?
Good morning from Los Angeles, everyone. Thank you.
It's early out there.
It is. It's 7:30. So I just want to piggyback on what Al said. So I'm currently literally starting on Monday, the new head of diversity for Paycheck. So I'm purposely trying to show the brand and show, right? I'm being very deliberate, and that's my comment. The organization has to be deliberate in creating a culture that shows that there are safe spaces, that there will not be retaliation when people do show that or express opinions or express any type of disagreement with leadership. So we have to prove that within the organization by how employees are able to be promoted. Are they, and being able to put measurements around. So it's a loaded question, but basically they have organizations, and I share this within my organizations, they have to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. And we've heard that expression 100 times. One of the things I was working on this morning, just in a practical sense, is we built a chat area in our IM where we have a space called Be Heard Now. And people are just, with the civil unrest last week, with, every day is something new. It's a space where people can have discussions, whether they want to call people thugs, they want to question why the CEO hasn't responded. They can chat in their IM and say whatever it is on their heart that they want to say without feeling that they'll be terminated the next day. So it also helps me as a leader and I am an HR professional for over 20 years. So it becomes at times an opportunity for to provide better solutions. So last thing I'll say is I always share with leaders that a complaint is an opportunity. So I wouldn't know you're in pain. I wouldn't know you're hurting unless you could tell me, right? So how can we help you without understanding what what our employees are stressing or hurting about? So just changing our mindset. Another thing I'm doing bright and early this morning, I was looking at, I'm just going to throw this out here, civility. And I don't want to get into a deep conversation about that, but that's something that I'm looking at too in our organization, just understanding beyond race and gender, beyond, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, just basic respect and civility for people. You want to be heard. I want to be heard, respecting when I'm vulnerable, respecting when you're vulnerable, and just making sure we show up and we are an example of respect and civility. So thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share. I have more questions, honestly, than comments, because here's my question for anybody who could help me. So, so I recently took the role as Paychex, and my title is DEI manager. I personally do not like the title, right? Paychex is a very conservative company. My last role was Chief Diversity Officer. So here's the thing. My last role was Chief Diversity Officer at an organization that really did not practice diversity. And then I have a title, and I know titles do or do not matter. That's my question. So as DEI manager, to me, it reflects that the organization is not that serious about diversity and inclusion, because although I have a lot of interaction with the executives and some influence, it's like, how much do I push to change? It's more than a title. So I think you understand where I'm trying to go. I appreciate my job, and I appreciate the opportunity. It's one of the first diversity roles within Paychex, but how do you deal with that? How do you deal with, there's always an area where you feel like you can't influence, you can't get past.
Equity. See what I mean? Julius, you got the answer. I saw your answer pop up in the chat. Julius Rhodes, another longtime friend. You guys have answers to these questions. But to me, another example of equity. Julius,
I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in just for a second, Shelton. Thanks. And Dr. Thatcher, good to see you again. I remember seeing you at the Milwaukee Diversity Conference a few years ago. But, what I basically said is, in an ideal world, the DE&I role would always report to the CEO. And absent of that, it has to be on par. That title has to be on par with other similarly situated, responsible positions. So if you're dealing with individuals who have a title of VP or senior director, and you're a manager, it almost dismisses the role that you play. So I think you do want to push, because, as you said, Paychex is a conservative company, but if they really want to step up their game and move ahead in the space, which all companies should be wanting to do and should aspire to do, you've got to respectfully push for that. And given your background, your history, your credentialing, that should not be something that you should accept lightly.
I agree. Let's hear from somebody from SHRM leadership. I mean, this sounds like, I know SHRM has got to have gotten this question a billion times. So let's hear from somebody, anyone in SHRM, Milwaukee SHRM leadership. You've got a person that's got a PhD, has been a chief diversity officer. Anyway, I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna let somebody else take that.
This is real talk, Shelton. Real talk.
I know.
And I'm being vulnerable, so
yeah, I want somebody from SHRM.
Make it a safe space.
Yeah. Anybody from SHRM?
I'll speak up.
Please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Desiree. And first off, Shelton, Al, incredible. I have oodles of notes and everything. And but specifically to your question is, I think, and trying to draw parallels with HR as well, as how long has it taken for us and HR to get to that C level? I think there's still an old school mentality when it comes to people and culture of HR as a place of administration and tactical. And it's been an upward climb trying to get us at the table. And I think through projects, through results, through conversation, I think you can really get yourself to be in front of the table. I think it's hard, and to be frank, when it's a newer position, you kind of have to like push it and make it happen and create it yourself to have that conversation and to be to show the value add within the organization. You can't just create a position just as a token. It's got to have much more meaning to it. But unfortunately, if companies are not at that point to see that as an equal counterpart at that C-suite level, it's got to, for lack of a better term, showing what the worth, the value, and executing on it will create that path to creating that opportunity at the table. And I think every organization's different. I think every organization's at a different DEI journey. And although we want to go from crawl to sprinting, I think you have to do a crawl, walk, run approach at the capacity in which the organization's acceptable and open, as well as, holding them accountable. If this is something that you're taking seriously, and here's XYZ of what we've accomplished, this role it should be at the same table. Now, are all organizations like that? Unfortunately not. And that does come back to that recruiting, that interviewing process of where are you today? Where do you see this role transitioning? And how do you as leaders view my position and view the work that I'm doing in comparison? So I don't know if I answered it completely, because I think every organization is different, every individual is different, every project work is different. But I think sometimes we have to roll up our sleeves and show the value that we bring and then advocate for that position.
Can I add to what she just said? I think Desiree in her last comment hit that right square on the head. And I think that too often we don't show a direct line between the action and value. And I think, Dr. Goode, one of the things you were talking about was making sure that as an HR professional, you're speaking the language of business. I mean, it's really nice to be nice to people for the fact of being nice, but at the end of the day, someone's holding us accountable for the bottom line. And right now, there are two things going on that I think are really important and really unique. One is that we're going to, for at least the next 2 decades, not have enough workers. It's not about a skills gap. It's not about people not being able to do the new jobs. We just won't have the bodies. So we're going to need everybody. And the second thing that happened was this summer, a lot of us old white guys got pushed out of our comfort zone by what we saw happening. And so there are a lot of us who are sitting there who are saying, we want to help and we don't know how. And if you come at us with traditional, the structure's important, the rules are important, all of those things are important. What's critical right now is how do you give a degree of comfortability to someone who's an old white guy growing up in a white part of Wisconsin to step forward and say, hey, how does this help or hurt? And really have that dialogue and find more friends.
Thank you all. These have been such great responses. If we can, I'd like to get to just 1 or 2 more questions. Next question, HR and small companies are strained. How can great intentions be put into action with such limited resources?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer to that. I do have a couple firms. One is Big Nerd Ranch. It's a high-tech company. It only has 115 people. Frederick Wildman and Sons, another client, 130. One deep person, my good buddy Tom Green, HR leader, and it's tough. It is tough. I wish, because not only do they not have the resources, they don't have the technology, they don't have the bandwidth, and so I do realize and respect and appreciate that a lot of things I just talked about for over an hour was great for mid-sized and large companies. But for smaller companies that do not have the resources and still maybe doing things with spreadsheets and whatever, I wish that I had an answer. I will open up, and again, I do have those as small clients. I do have small clients as customers, and we're helping them with their DE&I, and because again, they didn't have the bandwidth or the capability to do it. So I'm benefiting from that lack of capability and bandwidth. But in terms of all of that stuff I just got finished talking about, it is a challenge for your companies that are, let's say, 500 people or 500 FTEs or smaller. I've got SHRM experts on the line. Anyone that has an answer, I would love to hear what their answer is, because I don't have all the answers. I don't. I can come in and help you with, if you're a small company and you want to start a D&I council, I can help. But in terms of some of that talent management, talent acquisition, and all of that robust infrastructure, I don't know. I don't know how small companies do it, other than outsource it. Anybody from SHRM or NAAA, any small companies on the line that have some best practices, feel free to unmute and answer, because I don't have the answer.
I'm happy to share what we're doing within our organization. We have 207 employees. And again, going back to the crawl, walk, run approach, going at the pace in which our organization is organization oxygen. We also had a leadership change too, and a business strategy change as well. So on top of everything, might as well, let's just tackle and just evolve and as an organization. So what we've done is, I think the very first step in small organizations is you got to know your employees and you have to build relationships. You can't just superficially build a DE&I program without knowing that your leadership buy-in and understanding the importance, because you're not going to go anywhere if your leadership is not on board. I think in developing relationships with your employees, you will find out that trust, that vulnerability will come through when you come from a place of empathy and care, and also ensuring that we can't boil the ocean. And so through the relationships that I've built, and over the last, I would say, year and a half, 2 years, we've shown our support for our employee resource group to become Bold 365 is what they've called themselves. And it's Black Outstanding Leaders in Diversity. Now, we've never really had a full DE&I role. Again, 200 employees, we have a very small HR department. We're trying to do everything here. But in leveraging what they have really ignited, we can really help create this partnership along with our other employee resource group that focuses on helping our organization and women thrive, is creating this partnership of, okay, what is our strategy going forward? Okay, first, we're going to assess our organization. What is our employees and our workforce viewpoint on terms of diversity, inclusion, and equity? Okay, from that data, that's going to parallel with us from an HR side, showing our commitment to, harassment has been, over the last 2 years in terms of creating inclusion, but what about diversity? What about unconscious bias? Okay, that is a training that can come from the HR side to mandate. But so once we get these results back, and we're launching this month, so we're still early in the phases, that'll help kind of drive what direction we go. I think we have to be careful, any business strategy, without surveying your customers or surveying your employees and just going down a path of being blind and kind of just assuming what's best for the organization versus actually taking a pulse of what your organization wants, could lead you down a path of, no outcome. So you've got to make sure that you evaluate your organization, evaluate your leadership support and value of diversity, equity, inclusion, and then you do the crawl, walk, run, because you don't want to just throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, because employees are not stupid. They know it might be a trend or something in the air. And so you want to show sustainability and also creating that roadmap. And when you say best practices, to be honest, I don't even know if this is a best practice, but this is what's working for us. And it may not be perfect, but we're going to learn along the way and continue to pivot. But I think at the end of the day, the most important part is just taking that first step and taking that next step and then that next leap, and then ensuring that you're staying focused, that this is something that everyone supports. So
if I could just add one quick 30-second tag along, in addition to the relationships, it's also about resources. And many employees are struggling with trying to figure out what do they do. So what I always encourage my clients to do is to create a lending library, resources, and to also include in that topic discussions. So as you create and build that resource library, what are the things that we can do on an ongoing basis to have discussions around these issues? And it's purely voluntary. You'll send out something kind of like a brown bag lunch or whatever, where you say, hey, we're going to be discussing this reading that we share with all of you, because it gives people an opportunity to actually have their voice heard, but also hear the voices of other people. And I think when you combine the relationships with the resources that people need to try to help figure this out, you give yourself, particularly in a small organization, a robust opportunity to move DE&I forward.
Thank you, Julius, very much. It's a good way to end. And I think we could go on here for the next hour and a half. And unfortunately, we've come to pretty close to the conclusion. Let me just end it before I turn it over to Kristen, I believe. Am I going to turn it over to Kristen, Dorlisa, or are you going to come on? Okay.
Yes, Kristen.
Yeah, I just want to say this. First of all, I want to just say thank you to Dr. Shelton Goode, all the way from Atlanta, GA, which has been in the news recently, for this insightful, and give him a virtual hand of applause for what he's done, what he's shared with us, and for making us all better organizations. And Shelton, from the bottom of my heart, you're a deep friend of mine, you know that, and I want to thank you for what you've done, especially here in Milwaukee. I want to also—
Hey, Al, can I call you out real quick? I think this is the third time I've come to Milwaukee twice and done the joint meeting. I'm so proud of you and what you're doing with the Milwaukee SHRM to set the example of what a true collaboration works with. But you're my brother and I love you. But the real reason you had me come is because I'm free. Well, bro, I'm gonna send you a check next year.
If I can't get free from family, who can I get?
That's right. Yeah. I'm gonna kick you out the family because you like my brother who's always borrowing money from me. So no, I'm only kidding. I love you. I love you, man. Proud of what you guys are doing. Proud of what you guys are doing.
Send the bill to Metro Milwaukee SHRM. They can afford it. But let me just say this in ending, and thank you for the segue for that, in that this partnership, and that's why I took the time to give the introduction. It's so important. Thank you for a shout out to my NAAAH-HR colleagues from throughout the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast. I love all of you. And thank you from also my SHRM brothers and sisters, because I have my feet in both places as well too. But this is what comes when you let people express from their own lens. When you hear the vulnerability and things, that's how we grow. That's what this partnership really is all about. You see the lens, Metro Milwaukee SHRM, through NAAAH-HR, because we are unapologetically an African-American organization. We also see it through your lens, which, in all transparency, are mostly white organization or lack of people of color. So this is how we have to come together here in Milwaukee, which everybody knows our ills, in order for us to use our HR and D&I talent to move things forward. So I just want to say how proud I am of seeing all of you, the rainbow on the screen here, come together in order to talk out what we need, what's going on in this country that is so divided, in order to pull us all to do our part, to pull us a little bit closer together. And that's very important to me, and what drives me to make sure that this partnership keeps going after I exit the scene sometime going into retirement. So with that, I'll get off the pulpit, and I think it's Kristen, I'll let you close us out and land this airplane so we can all go. God bless all of you, and thank you again.
Thank you so much. The conversation today, I know that Dr. Goode said don't try to take notes, but I think I covered 4 or 5 pages of what if, or could we possibly, or wouldn't it be amazing if kind of questions. So thank you so much for being here. Please make sure that you are completing the survey. Dorlisa and I have dropped a couple of links in the chat. This important information helps us to continue to bring programs like this to the organizations that we provide support for. So whether it is NAAAH-HR or Metro Milwaukee SHRM, we want to continue to provide value. And through the energy that we saw here today, the questions, the engagement, I know that we provided value for the people who participated, and we had close to 100 participants today. So we touched over 100 people in the HR space today with this message and this enthusiasm and this engagement in this really, really critical topic, as we're all really looking for what we can do and how we can make an impact. So thank you so much for that. Over the next couple of days, you will receive information via the email that you've provided either to NAAAH-HR or Metro Milwaukee SHRM. You will get all of this information to spend extra time with, because I know we could have all spent additional time here today with the conversation, but you will be able to rewatch the recording. You will be able to dive in to all of the amazing research that Dr. Goode is providing to us, and all of the numbers and all of the white papers behind that. So thank you so much for that. In addition, you will also get information on how to get those recertification credits. So you will get that information in that email. I believe that Jane will also include the link to the survey. So it's a shameless plug for us to get your feedback, so that we can continue to convince Dr. Goode that maybe he wants to participate with us again going forward, by telling him how amazing he is and how valuable his time with us is. So thank you all so much for participating, and thank you for the committee who put this together. It was absolutely incredible to work with this group of people. And I know that we really want to send a shout out to Darlene one more time for all of her work at Metro Milwaukee SHRM and supporting the leadership team through really kicking off this work, and the transition that we have going on with that team is more valuable now probably than ever. So thank you all so much for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you in additional events.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.